Okay, so why don't we get started?
Okay, so Sarah LaCroix, the finance director. We didn't prepare a presentation this time. We thought we would take you through a high-level capital plan for 27, a look at the 5-year, and there are some decision points we'll have that we want to get some advice on before we come back next week for our final capital committee meeting before we solidify this and move into the budget. So here you can see on this sheet, I have FY27 highlighted in yellow. Right now, with department requests and review from Kelly and myself, we've got about 1.1 million in debt service, 1.4 million in capital infrastructure, and 1.235 million in equipment. And you can see here that leaves a total budget of 3.8 roughly for FY27, and that is over 1.1 million over the prior year budget. If we use the 2-cent method that we've talked about by increasing the tax rate to cover additional infrastructure, it would leave about a $900,000 gap. And so we have some different ideas, different things to discuss, and we're hoping to get input as we move ahead. So here first, I'll take you through the equipment, and you can see here right now in FY27 we have listed the replacement of an ambulance, we have auto pulse units, 2 police cruisers, and we start to budget for portable radios that will be coming due in the next few years. Then as we move into DPW, and you can see we've got an F550 budgeted, a sidewalk plow budgeted, a plow truck also budgeted in this plan, and a portion of the bucket truck. As we move into parks, we also have included a utility vehicle for the parks since we have an extensive amount of trails, and $50,000 for technology. That gets us to that 1.235 equipment number. And you can see that that number is high. We do still have deferred maintenance and equipment that should have been replaced during COVID and the flood, and so we're still playing catch up with that. I do think we will come back with proposals and a process to discuss the sales tax, which might help soften the blow and allow us to catch up a little bit quicker here, so you can see the equipment needs. Next, I'll shift to, maybe I'll shift. Evelyn now. Okay. So you can see here, we've got funds budgeted for infrastructure. In 27, you can see we've got an amount slotted in for the Waverly Place stairs. The pool house needs painting and resealing of asphalt and a chemical reader for the pool. Parks has a new shelter outhouse. It's a composting unit, as well as replacement of tree mains or tree grates on Main Street and in front of City Center that would help liven up the downtown and replace some trees that have since passed in those locations. And then you can see here for infrastructure, we've slotted in $825,000 for street paving. And that's one of the things we'd like to talk about mostly tonight is how aggressive do we want to be with paving? I know that the community is really interested and council is really interested in expediting the paving plan and getting us up to the $1.2 million steady state funding. Currently, we have built this capital budget at the 825 with sidewalks funded in there. But Zach has some alternatives he'll take you through that could get us up to the 1.2 million in paving for hitting steady state in 27. And if that is the recommendation of the committee, when we come back next time, we will have 1.2 million budgeted in paving for each of the next 5 years. And we'll talk about the allocation of sales tax that would help bump that budget up sooner than the 5-year projection. So next, I will show you, in the past, we've talked about a building reserve. This is not funded, but something we need to consider. And so based on the APAA recommendation of 3% of the insured value, I tried to show some math here about what it would look like if we started to fund reserves in for, our buildings that are in need of maintenance. And so I just want to make sure we aren't thinking about paving in a silo because the city has a ton of assets. And so we want to make sure, you know, this is not included, no funding for these are included in this year's capital plan. But I think if we can get paving up to steady state, then we can start working on strategically getting these into the capital plan in future years so that we can identify and take care of some of that deferred maintenance we're seeing. And so I'm gonna let Zach talk about paving a little bit. We've got a proposed FY27, FY28, and FY29 with some options that get us up to that 1.2 million in steady state, which I think is the real crux of this conversation today is how aggressive do we want to be with the capital plan? And if this committee is in support of that and in support of a potential recommendation of use of sales tax to expedite that, then that will be part of a recommendation that comes forward for next week's council meeting. And so with that, I'm going to let Zach talk about paving.
Thank you. Zach Blodgett, Deputy Director for Public Works. First, I want to say that we started out in FY27 with the 825 mark. So we selected streets, we looked at kind of what would fit well together. And then we paired each of those streets with all the other things that might need to happen. So you'll see that if Sarah went back to, I think it was one of the earlier slides where it showed the values of like for steady state, there was a significant jump specifically in sidewalks. So we had 50,000 in this current fiscal year, and we went from 50 to 171. So that 171 is a number with DPW acting as a general contractor and subbing out all that sidewalk work. If that were to be fully contracted out, we're looking more at like a $230,000 to $240,000 number in order to do the sidewalks that specifically support the paving, curbing, ramps, not Cadillac sidewalks. It is really what has to be done in order to pave the street. So I really wanted to point that out, that we do have the 825 in the paving for this year, but we also needed to do all the other components. So there's an additional 171 in sidewalks. So when we talk about trying to get to steady state, not just in paving, we're also trying to get there in all of the other categories, stormwater, in sidewalks, in paving. So what we have right now is this is the baseline, and that is not at using local options money that's baked into capital. So we have the 825 in the street paving, and then the 171 in sidewalks that really goes hand in hand with the streets that were selected. As we move into, can you go to the FY27 sheet? So here's a list of the streets, a rough draft of the streets that were selected. And really the kind of the big things that I wanted to highlight is we were proposing how to use that delta, the gap. So in order to get to the $1.2 million, we needed to come up with streets that were about $375,000. So you can see that one of the recommendations that we have proposed was to move Elm Street, the section between State Street and the Spring Street Bridge. And that's about $300,000. 200,000 of that is specific to the paving of the street, and then the other 100,000 roughly is curbing and sidewalks. And then in addition to that, we're recommending the Robin Hood Circle. And the reason why we picked Robin Hood Circle is because we have another street right in that close proximity. So it kind of fit the mold for the number that we were looking for to plug the gap. And then it was also, there wasn't another year that it made sense to kind of be in that area. So to get to the 1.2 million kind of steady state value, we would propose adding Elm Street to the base list and Robin Hood Circle. And that would be an additional 375. And the total road miles, and this includes fog sealing and crack sealing, would be around 8 miles of our total network. So all of our streets equate to 42 miles. So when you start thinking that we're touching 8 miles of road a year, now that's not all repaving, some of that's preservation. That's a significant value. So for roughly our target should be between 2 to 3 miles of paving per annually. If you take our total miles and divided out by the how many years of pavement should last, right? On the low range, you should expect 12 years. On a higher range, 20. So our target is about 2.5 miles that we need to repave. So this certainly does that. And then if we look, we've done the same thing for FY28 and for FY29. In FY28, we raised it up by another 100,000. So our base budget started at 925. And then we have two alternatives that we are recommending and would like some feedback. One is Berlin Hill, and that would be a cold in place recycling project from River Street all the way up to the town line, 1.09 miles, similar process to what we did on Town Hill Road. Or the other one that kind of fit that same $600,000 price tag was North Street. There's been a lot of talk about North Street. Which is 1.27 miles to do the entire roadway. My only kind of not catch on North Street is that North Street needs a new water main, needs sidewalks, needs railings. My guess, and Kurt's behind me, is that there's probably some sewer improvements that need to happen on North Street as well. So both being all things considered equal on the price tag, do we have a preference on which one we should try to advance? Is North Street a higher priority than Berlin? And then when we think about how does that look in the community, we have East State Street, which is a major thoroughfare and kind of right in the heart of our downtown. Will it be harder to navigate if Berlin Hill is also being done at the same time that East State Street is being done? So that's some of the challenges that we're looking at, but those are two alternatives that could get us to that $1.2 million mark in FY28. And then I did the same sort of exercise for FY29. And in this one, for talking purposes, I chose to put North Street into FY29 because it better aligned with our water plan and giving us some time to make sure that we have two major culverts that need to be done on North Street. So Berlin Hill is a little bit more plug and play per se, but they're both good projects and they both need to be done. And they both really come at the same price tag. So I don't know if there is a strong opinion from council or from the public on which one should go first, but that's it's what we were using to look at these streets and to figure out how do we get to that steady state value, and then how do we had a lot of questions at the last meeting around, well, how do we add a street but not overwhelm staff, not deplete resources? So what we've proposed is stuff that is manageable, right? And so by selecting Elm Street and having a contractor do the curbing and sidewalk, that is manageable for us. DPW is not, and we're not hand in hand involved with that work. So same with Berlin Street, we would sub out the structure adjustments, but Berlin Street doesn't have nearly the sidewalk needs that, or as many other needs as North Street might. So.
Wow. So I guess the takeaway is there's a lot that goes into this and there are a lot of moving parts. We will be back in front of you next week where we hope to get a decision about what capital plan you want to put forth and lock down to go in the city manager's budgets that's presented on the 10th. And, we've heard that paving is really a priority. I think, with the sales tax money we didn't have before, we have opportunities to meet steady state sooner than otherwise, and it wouldn't necessarily be direct taxpayer dollars that gets us there, I think, which helps offset the burden some. But I guess we're looking for feedback on, if 1.2 this year is what you want, and that moving forward, we will build out the 5-year plan with paving budgeted at the $1.2 million. In addition, if there are other projects or things you think that we are missing that are critical for 27, we would want to hear about them now. But Ben?
Yeah, I just want to say, first of all, thanks so much for going back and running through those scenarios. I do feel like with the local option tax, to the degree to which it allows us to accelerate getting to steady state is really important to consider. And so I'm, inclined to be really supportive about it. I would say, Zach, in terms of your questions about, Berlin versus North Street, like I really feel like that's your expertise, right? Like I'm assuming you'll be doing all the calculations on the number of, car counts and who's going to be impacted. And I really appreciate that you're thinking too about, the water or sewer improvements that would need to happen in North Street, like all of that kind of stuff. I really, I look forward to hearing your recommendation. I guess if you're looking for feedback from this council member anyway, and I think probably some other ones too, I think accelerating to the steady state is the direction that I would like to see us pursue, and at least see some more scenarios about what that could look like. I did have like one question of something I just I wasn't sure I understood. That what I understand right now, fiscal year 27, 825 for paving, and that has currently been proposed, and then 171 for, I think I got that number right, for the sidewalks. If we're to increase the paving to, when we say we're increasing to 1.2, does that include paving and sidewalks combined, or is it just paving, and then is there a corresponding increase required for sidewalks?
So in this scenario, we specifically added the 171 in addition to the 825. And we don't always have the ability to do that. But when we were going through these, analysis, we started at the 825. Then we did an assessment on our sidewalks. And then we had that number and what it was going to take in order to keep all of the roads at an 825. At 825. So if we didn't want as big of an increase, we would have had to reduce roads. So the 171 is directly supporting it, and it's not taking out of the paving budget.
I guess my question is, if we increase the paving budget to 1.2, do we then need to increase the sidewalk budget at a corresponding level?
Yeah. So what I did for like Elm Street for next year, and one of the alternatives was I put in $200,000 that was directly for paving, and then another 100,000 to support the sidewalks. So what you see is a paving package of 300,000 for Elm Street, and that is sidewalks and the roads. Because you asked before, Ben, at what point are we going to tip over to the point that DPW can't provide those services? So we developed the plan first, and then at this point, we will have to rely on contractors to help us get the rest of it done. So that's how we structured that. And the same is true with Berlin Street with structure adjustments.
Okay, great.
Yes, Carrie?
Yeah, thank you so much for putting it all together. And I say it's really exciting to sit here to think about how to spend more money. I've never been part of a conversation like that in city council. So that's great. And I'm very much in favor of getting to the steady state funding level as fast as we can. I mean, I've been in all the past years that we've been doing this, I've always wanted us to be more aggressive with the funding of that. And so the idea that we might be able to get to that sooner than we had thought is fantastic. So I would really like to see that happen. That being said, there is the context of the whole entire city budget that we will be considering, down the road. And so the question of if there are other things that we have to give up in the city budget in order to increase the paving budget, then we need to weigh that. But maybe we don't if we use the local options tax, and maybe that's great. And then answer your questions about priorities. I'm kind of with Ben. I feel like you guys are the experts. You make your decision. The way you've explained it to us in the past about the efficiency of deciding to do the water at the same time or what else needs to be done, that all makes a lot of sense to me. And so if that were your reasoning for going with Berlin Street first, I think that would be fine. But again, yes, that would be a big impact. At the same time, it would be very visible, right? Montpelier is paving. Yeah. So, but I don't have strong feelings about either one of those.
Okay.
Awesome. So, I think with the sales tax piece, if you, both you and Ben decide that you want us to get us to the 1.2, that's what I'm hearing, that may be a recommendation for use of sales tax money. I think, we would present in December a budget as a whole. And then if you felt that the tax rate was too high or there were different allocations you saw fit, I think we could then definitely pare back paving or the capital plan if that's what was decided. But at least if you guys feel strongly that we want to get up to that 1.2 and do the other things in this plan, then we're happy to bring that back to you next time. And we'd like to do better.
I would just quickly say that, like, I'm also cognizant of the fact that we have said kind of repeatedly that we were going to discuss the process for the allocation of the local option tax. And, I think that conversation still needs to happen. But I also think that being aggressive to get to the steady state is important. And that this is actually a really appropriate use of the local option tax funds to do that, because we have people coming from other communities using our roads, shopping in our stores, leaving, but not contributing. This is the way in which they contribute, right? And so I think it's an appropriate use of the funds to repair the roads that they use.
And I hear you about that sales tax allocation. That is going to be on the next council agenda to discuss. I will be back in front of you with rough estimates and process and proposals and recommendations.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. Dan?
Yes, thank you. Dan Courier. I live on 10 George Street in Montpelier, up off of Berlin Street. As a resident in that portion of town, I would advocate for Berlin Street to be in 28. Heck, I would welcome Berlin Street to be in 27, to be totally honest. The bike lane in particular is falling apart, and the street itself is quite a hazard. I'll just share, and I'm happy to share some more. My son was actually hit on his bike while coming down Berlin Street because a driver said he didn't know that there was a bike lane on that road, and the paint's gone and the signs are still there, but it still feels unsafe. And so as a resident for Berlin Street, I would voice for safety concerns for Berlin Street as well, sort of maybe raising it higher. Not that North Street shouldn't also be done, but just wanted to see that on the list. Happy to see it. And if I had to say anything about the steady state, I agree. The more time we spend improving our pavement now, the longer it will last, including the preservation of it. And so I think it's a great practice for our city to move towards. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. Jake?
Yes, hi, Jake Brown, 115 College Street. Thanks for doing all this. I'm really happy to see the steady state conversation going this way. It's really, really high time. I think we got on top of this, and I'm just thrilled to see that there could be the financing coming together as well. So I'm just completely supportive of 1.2, and I would say as a resident of Montpelier, go for it. It's high time. There's plenty of work to do out there. And I would also say that the council, I think the council several months ago when you all decided to put the item on the ballot for the local options tax, you discussed or allocated some money for infrastructure already. So there's a bit of a history there. And I think there's no reason not to continue that history, continue that priority. So thanks for everything. Just wanted to weigh in there. Thanks.
Thank you, Jake. Are there any other questions that people may have or guidance from the counselors?
Hello, can I be heard by any chance?
Yes, Steve, go ahead.
Hi, I wasn't sure that my hand was even up. This is Steve Cease. I live on North Street. And with both of the earlier public commenters, I totally support the notion of getting to the 1.2 as quickly as possible. My particular concern is North Street. I understand Dan's concerns about Berlin Street. North Street's pretty much in the same boat, if not worse. Over the years, we've descended, it seems to me, to the bottom of the barrel. We're just about now, I think, the worst of the worst in the city. And it's been years of discussion with little or no action. Now, I heard with great interest Zach's idea that we could do something either between Elm or North as a kind of a stopgap. And I totally support that notion. If we could get some kind of treatment of North Street in the next few years, in the early years, with the understanding that a bigger project is going to be coming along in the out years, I think both I and probably just about all of my fellow residents up here would be very happy with that outcome. If I understood Zach correctly, I would argue for North Street, obviously, and I hope you would agree. I know you're kind of tossing the ball to Zach, And that's a great spot for him to be in. Of course, hello there, Zach. But I would like you to hear my concerns and the concerns of my fellows up here. It's been forever that we've been suffering, and it's really not fun. So with that thought, good luck, and let's get to the 1.2, and let's cover up North Street. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Anybody else? And I have to say, Carrie, I have yet to see us have money here either, so I'm a little excited about the idea that we can invest more in capital infrastructure and get us to where we need to go. So thank you.
Okay, I mean, so what the next step will be is we'll come back next week with a more polished, finalized plan for you to consider. And that we'll use for the basis for the city manager's presentation to come before you for deliberations. And we do this process so that then, councilors get the chance to kind of weigh in and help us shape what this looks like, so that when it comes to council as part of the manager's budget, it's been vetted to some degree, a big degree. And also tonight on the agenda, we do have a capital plan workshop. So we'll be going through some of these details and sort of the general process at that point too. So there's plenty of opportunity for input. We're just very thankful for yours tonight.